Hello, you are listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira.
Hi, I'm Tammy.
And I'm Thomas.
And we are back. And this week's episode is called Law of Attraction.
The Law of Attraction, or How to Stop Attracting Crap into Your Life.
I like that title too.
Right. And how many of you out there feel like you're like a magnet that attracts garbage into your life, you know, in this divorce process?
Yes, I definitely did when I was going through divorce.
You know, you have problems with your ex, you have problems with your attorney, you have problems with the court,
the judge, yeah.
Yeah, and
your kids are killing you.
The kids, everything. And it just seems like everything is crazy. Well, you might be stuck in something we call a feedback loop.
Yes, and there are negative feedback loops and there are positive feedback loops.
All right. So what's an example, Tammy, of a positive feedback loop?
Well, I would say...
Because we're going to start positive. We're going to start this...
always want to start with the good news, right?
Yes.
So, okay. So, like Thomas and I go to Olive Garden pretty frequently, usually once a week. But if you listen to the podcast, you may know we've been without a kitchen since January 6th. So our Olive Garden trips are a little more frequent now than they used to be.
She always says, "Where do you want to go?" And I throw out the names of 5 different restaurants. And she says, No, I don't want to go for that one. Olive Garden. Yeah, let's go to Olive Garden.
I love Olive Garden. So we go in and we're there enough to where they know us essentially. And, you know, we tip pretty well. I worked in fast food or at McDonald's as a teenager and stuff. So I know how hard the work in food in general is. And so, you know, we tip pretty well. And we go in and, you know, I tend to order the same thing, and Thomas frequently does too. And so they know, do we want soup? Do we want salad? What our drinks are, blah, blah, blah. So often when we've been at the table for just a couple minutes, we'll suddenly have all of our stuff there, our soup, our salad, our drinks, you know, our bread, whatever. And they anticipate that, you know, before they even come to the table the first time. And so it's like, wow, we get such good service, you know, and so then we tip well. And then the server is like, wow, they tip really well. I'm going to give them really good service. So it becomes this feedback loop that, you know, is that amplifies, you know, across each thing and becomes stronger and stronger.
Right. And Tammy is very good at certain techniques to be a good customer. Like, for example, they like it when you order everything up front, so they don't have to keep coming back.
Right.
If you don't want to keep sending them back for one thing.
Right.
And so forth. And it's always nice to smile.
Right. Right. Yeah. Thomas's, I had this experience with Thomas's son recently. We had to take him to the DMV, and he's so negative a lot of times in his interaction with other people. And he was struggling with something, and, you know, he's 18, so I'm trying to let him adult and do his thing. And, you know, he calls me across the other side of the DMV because I was handling something else and is frustrated that something's not working right and he can't get help on one of the machines or something he was doing. And it's like, you know, I said, did you ask for help? And he's, I didn't, they won't help me, you know? And so it's like trying to get him to smile and to interact positively and to
get that feedback loop. If you're at the DMV, you might be the first person that smiled at that clerk all day.
That's true. That's true. DMV is not a fun place that we all go, yay, let's go to the DMV.
Go to the DMV. Imagine if you work there.
Sit there for 2 hours. Yeah.
And in some ways, it's about putting yourself in their position.
Right.
I mean, they kind of have a boring clerical job, and they deal with the public, and they deal with a lot of grumpy, angry people. And so, you know, that's a feedback loop too.
Yeah.
But my son, his feedback loop is that he really puts out a negative vibe for whatever, to use a term. And for example, he'll be walking down the hallway at school, and somebody will say, "Hey, Isaiah," and he'll go, "What?" "Oh, I'm sorry, I mentioned his name."
That's okay.
Yeah, not supposed to do that. he responds, "What?" And what he's reacting to is something inside of him that he likes to be in his own cocoon. He doesn't like to be
His
jolted.
own zone.
He
Yeah.
likes to be jolted, and I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You do that to me sometimes. You snap when I speak to you.
Right. But the person that's coming, he was trying to be friendly.
Right.
So he thinks, "Wow, what a jerk."
Yeah.
And so behaves negatively towards my son.
Right.
And my son doesn't have any insight into why this person's behaving this way. He just thinks, this guy's a jerk.
Yeah.
This guy's a monkey's butt.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so the more the other person responds negatively, the worse he gets. And the worse he gets, the more that person responds negatively.
Yes. And there is your negative feedback.
That's a negative feedback loop.
Right.
It amplifies
Right.
over and over, like getting your microphone too close to the speaker. It
Right.
amplifies. What I try to tell my son, because he comes to me and he says, "Well, this person did this to me at school, and this person did that to me at school, and everybody's on my case, and nobody likes me, and it's like I'm going to go eat worms," you know.
Yeah.
And I say, "Well," I almost said his name again. So and so, my son, my beautiful son. He used to be a little tiny baby. He was so cute, and
I get it.
and I say to him, try smiling. Just try walking around, and every person you come into contact with, give them a smile, and see if that changes your day.
Yeah.
If people start responding to you more positively, because a smile says, "I like you. I'm easy to approach. I'm a nice person.
I'm helpful."
I'm not going to bite your head off."
Right.
And you put that out there, and people are going to respond positively. And pretty soon you're going to be thinking, "Wow, I must be a pretty nice guy. All these people are responding to me." You know, maybe I'm going to stop eating worms.
I worked at McDonald's in high school, and it really was a great training ground. It was my first job when I was 16. And there's a lot of very specific training at McDonald's. That's why everything comes out the same pretty much restaurant to restaurant. And we were always taught to smile. You're taught those same types of behaviors, greeting people when they come through the door, saying goodbye when they leave, being friendly during the interaction. And one of the things that they taught us big at the one that I worked at in particular, it was like the customer's always right. So if the customer came up and they said something was wrong, you didn't try to argue with them about, well, you didn't ask for that, or you didn't order that, or, well, I have to charge you $3 extra for that. You didn't do any of that. It's like the customer's always right, and you gave it to them.
Right.
And I mean, do you have people that take advantage of that? Yeah, I think you do. But on the whole, no. On the whole, most people are honest about it, and that creates a great customer service situation.
Right.
And even when you're on the phone, like I talk to clients a lot on the phone, and at one point in my career, I had a very, very short stint as a telemarketer. And that's one of the things they teach you in that too, is to smile. Even though you're on the phone and the person can't see you, that tone comes through in your voice.
Right. That's why I smile at you so much, Tammy.
Yes, that is.
I'm trying to
create a positive feedback loop.
I'm trying to create a positive feedback loop with you. Yes. And how does that jibe with what we're talking about today? Well, most of us, I would say almost all of us who have been divorced at one time or another have had negative feedback loops with our exes.
Yes.
Okay. And it's usually over something, because if you've been married to somebody, you know how to push their buttons, okay? And they know how to push yours.
Yes, they do.
So the seed of conflict is this negative feedback loop where in every interaction you're expecting a negative reaction.
Yes.
So you're grumpy, and they perceive you negatively, so they give you the negative reaction that you were expecting.
Yes.
And then it evolves into this negative feedback loop that gets amplified.
It's kind of interesting because coming into this episode today, one of the things that, a lot of times our episodes come out of, things that we're experiencing or people around us are experiencing or clients are experiencing or whatever that we see somebody struggling with. And this morning, in fact, as we're recording this episode, I woke up with a text message from my ex-husband, which I only communicate with my ex-husband a couple times a year. So it was a little unusual. And I knew almost instantly what he wanted because one of my sons are 27 and 31, and one of them had kind of made a significant life decision in the last couple of days and had shared it with me and his dad and his brother. And as soon as I saw the message from my ex-husband, I thought, oh, he wants to talk about our son and this decision. And, our sons are adults. Like, I can't control what they're
she's a professional at this. She trains other people. Yeah. So she was nice to him.
Well, not only that, but I'm not trying to control my child's decisions, right? He's old enough to make his own decision. I can give my input if he asks for it. I can be supportive of the decision, whether I agree with it or not, and supportive of him. But it's not my place to say, oh, that's a bad decision. Oh, that's a good decision. It's sort of like, what? Like I've had this perfect life for the last 50 years and he should take all of my advice. No. So anyway, I call my ex-husband back and, essentially it was about a 3 to 5 minute conversation of him grilling me and asking me questions about how our son plans to handle different aspects of this life decision. And I essentially said, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't ask on that level. If he wants to share that, he will, and so we hung up. So I called my son and said, hey, heads up. Your dad just called and asked me all these questions. I don't really know what's going on, but just so you know. Well, my ex-husband proceeded to then call our other son, have a whole discussion with him, then call our son that made the decision and have a whole discussion with him and essentially get into an argument with him. So once they get into an argument, my son called his brother and then my son called me and then my other son called me. So it's like the whole day around a decision that my son made that is, it's nothing, it's nothing like really negative or anything. It's just a life decision he made for him and his wife made together for their family, whatever. And my ex-husband is just like running around, like stirring all the pots, trying to create all this drama, all this conflict between my sons, between me and my sons, and everything. And honestly, 15 years ago at the time of the divorce, I mean, they were young and their state of life was different, but I would have handled this situation totally differently than I did today.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is too that he's been on the outside in our family system for a while. We have nurtured a family system where, and this, it's important to think about, I think, what are the dynamics that are going on in these situations so we can stop the feedback loops.
Right.
But Tammy's ex-husband, it has been kind of on the outside looking in for a while now, whereas I, as the stepfather, have relationships with his sons and with their wives and with the 4 grandkids. And not only that, but we've set up kind of a positive feedback loop where, we don't make a big deal out of every transgression and we're nice and we're supportive and we try to help them. And they respond by giving us contact with the grands.
Right.
So they put them on the Facebook and we laugh and we FaceTime.
Yeah.
And we have, and so that even though we can't get to Idaho all the time,
right,
we have maintained a warm relationship with the grandkids. And
well, and we've been supportive and we've sacrificed. I mean, we've helped with these moves, like physically.
Yeah.
We've gone and helped pack up the truck and move people and like do the whole thing, even though I didn't want them to live, 1,000 miles away from me or whatever. We've always tried to be supportive. And I think, their dad tends to participate if it's convenient for him at the time. And if it's not, then he doesn't. But as soon as there's a decision to be made, he's the first person to give his opinion. And I think that's the thing that makes it kind of offensive sometimes for my kids is like, well, you're not really here. I can't really count on you to help and participate, but yet you're the first person to give me an opinion on something. And especially if that opinion is critical or saying they shouldn't do it,
Well, they're when we have contact with the boys or their wives or the grands, all those people are expecting a positive interaction.
Right.
We are all expecting to have fun and laugh and like each other and say nice things. But when your ex-husband calls,
we're all holding our breath.
We're all wondering what
does he want?
Yeah, that's when the crap storm starts.
Right.
And we went to church today, and when we came back, everybody was upset. Everybody in the family was upset.
Yeah.
And we spent the first 4 hours of our day talking to people about, and letting them vent, and they were upset, and there was a lot of drama. And you don't need that.
Right. And here is the big thing I will share, and I think this is very significant if you're going through a divorce, okay? 15 years ago, the way I would have handled this. Now, my boys were 15 and 11 at that time. So yes, there was a lot more parental input, but still my oldest son was 15 and I tried to let him, manage what was age appropriate. But if this had happened 15 years ago, the first thing I would have done after I talked to my sons would have been to call their dad and say, what is your problem? Why are you doing this? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, and I think as moms in particular, I can't speak for dads, but for moms in particular, it's like we have this mama bear protective, like you just want to call the person that's hurting your kid and call them on it, right? And I see that a lot in my coaching group and my my ladies that are in my group membership in particular. It's like they struggle so much because they feel like they need to protect their kids from the negative impact that they feel dad has sometimes.
Right. And that reinforces the feedback loop because then it comes back in his direction and it is amplified again. And he feels like, well, every time I try to have contact with my sons or with their mother, it's a negative and the reason for this is because mom's alienating the children. That's always the reason.
Right.
I don't have a relationship with my kids because mom is pitting them against me, is saying negative things or whatever it is.
And I think my ex-husband, has put me in that same light.
Right.
It's like the reason he doesn't have a relationship with the kids, in his opinion, is because, they're their mama's boys or their whatever label he wants to slap on it that day, or I'm the one trying to alienate him or whatever. And from my perspective, the reason he doesn't have the relationship is because he hasn't stepped up to the plate. He hasn't sacrificed. He hasn't invested in those relationships.
Right.
And so when this happens, like I said, 15 years ago, I would have picked up the phone and said, blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you what that does. Okay. That's my first inclination as a mom and, like, as a human being. I want to pick up that phone and go and give him a piece of my mind, you know?
And we fantasize about it. You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to.
But here's what happens. Okay. Yeah. It furthers the negative feedback loop cycle between me and him and the boys, the 4-way dynamic. And what it causes him to do is to call one of my sons, whoever I tell him somebody said something or whatever, he calls one of them and he goes, oh, I see, you had to go call your mommy again and blah, blah, blah. And that's what he does. He like uses it. He calls them and uses it as an emotional weapon. So I would love it. And I know the court wants us to, especially with young, when we have underage children, to cooperate with that other parent. And it would be so nice if I could have a rational discussion with my ex-husband about, here are our concerns. I'm just worried. I don't know if he's making the right decision. Yeah. Should we talk to him about this? Should we let him do his thing? I mean, it'd be so nice to just be able to cooperate, or even just say, I know this is their decision, but I'm a little worried about them. Can we do anything to help them and support them? But it's not used that way. Any discussion I have, which is why my phone call this morning was 3 to 5 minutes, because I know anything I say on that phone call is then going to be used to try to...
Right. He's going to take that to the boys and say, well, you know what your mom said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And he did do that
Right.
because what happened was he had a conversation then with each of my children. And then each of my children called me, our children, I should say. We teach people not to say my children, but each of our boys called me after they talked to their dad.
Because they're mama's boys.
And said, well, Dad, here's what Dad's saying. And my one son who's making
I'm
this.
a mama's boy too, by the way.
I know. And my one son that's making this decision, he said that, well, Dad said you have concerns or you feel this way or you da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I didn't say that to your dad. If I felt that way, I would say it to you. I don't need to go talk to your dad about how I feel. I'll just I have a very good open relationship with both my kids. If I think something, they know. One thing they know about me is I'm going to say it. I mean, most of the time I try to keep my opinions to myself because they're adults.
Yes.
But if I feel strongly and I feel like it needs to be said, I'll say it to them. I don't need to go say it to their dad to come in third hand.
Right.
And so essentially the whole day was just fraught with drama because of the way my ex-husband handled it. And I have two choices. Okay. I probably participated in the drama, I guess, a little bit in the form that I let both of my children vent to me about it. Right. But I think that's important to give them that support when they feel frustrated.
I used to call my mom and vent about my
your
relationships and my dad. Yeah.
Your monkey's butt dad too.
Yeah. That's a story for another day.
But the thing I won't do at this stage is call my ex-husband, excuse me, I keep doing that. You're my husband. I'm very sorry.
I didn't even notice.
we get used to that. We've gotten used to that over the years of talking about him. But I won't call my ex-husband at this point and try to talk any sense into him or try to repair anything between him and either of our boys or tell him I don't approve of what he did or any of that, because anything I do, number one, tells him that he upset B, tells him that he upset one of our children or both, and also gives him more ammunition to continue the negative feedback loop. And that's the cycle that divorcing people get in.
Right. So what do we do? In my mind, I have 3 steps. Now, first of all, I think it's important to understand what's going on. And in this situation, we've had, I described kind of the closeness of our family system and the fact that it's excluded. And I think that a lot of what he's reacting to is his own feelings of jealousy in not being included. So what does he do? He turns around and he makes our whole day about him.
Right.
So that's kind of what's happening. And then I think that when you're in a feedback loop, if I'm performing and my amplifier's acting out, I move the mic away from them. I put my hand over it. I move the mic away from the speaker.
Right.
Because that's how you break the feedback loop.
Right.
So the Bible says, there's a famous proverb. I couldn't tell you what.
Well, you can't quote the Bible without giving us a verse reference. What's wrong with you?
Just look up "a gentle answer turns away wrath." You know how I find Bible verses? I use Google. Google's really good at finding Bible verses. So a gentle answer turns away wrath.
Right.
So if you can muster at the time, this is, high degree of difficulty.
Yes.
But if you can muster some patience and some sympathy for what that person might be going through, you might you might be able to answer him softly.
Right.
And what you said that you regretted what did you want to do? You said after you spoke with your ex-husband, what you wanted to say was something other than what you said.
Well, what I wish is he asked me a series of questions about how, and we had a similar thing with our other son a few years ago. He made a significant life decision and there was kind of this similar thing. And so what he essentially did is he asked me questions. Well, how's he going to handle this? Well, I don't know. I think he's planning on doing A. Well, how's he going to handle this? Well, I don't know. I think he's planning on doing B. Well, and he's like, well, how's he doing this? I said, well, I didn't ask. And so I really wish that I hadn't even had that much of a conversation with him. And I really didn't give away anything that he wouldn't have already known from talking to our son. But I wish I had just said something along the lines of, you know what? I don't really want to be on the phone with you having a discussion behind our son's back about whether we approve of his decision or not. And let me just say that for a normal married couple, if your son made a decision, I think having a discussion between husband and wife would be a perfectly normal thing to do, and having concern and all that kind of thing. But depending on the type of ex-spouse you have, you know, like I think with your ex-wife, a lot of times, I mean, your kids are still a little bit younger, but we do sometimes have discussions about, you know, your older one and, you know, the negativity and how can we help him and what can we do? And, but we're both on that page. What my ex-husband is doing is really fishing for things that he can go back and use against me with our kids to try to leverage his relationship with them.
Or try to level the playing field or
something. And so every time I talk to him about anything significant, I feel stabbed in the back after the fact. And that's why I didn't even really, that's why the conversation was very, very short this morning. But I said to Thomas, even in retrospect, I wish I hadn't even engaged that minimally. I wish I would have just said, you know what, if you want to know about this, call our son. Not my place.
And there's a nice way to say that. You could say something like, you know, I'll bet you he would love to hear from his father.
Why don't you just call and ask him?
Why don't you give him a call? Yeah. You don't have to be nasty about it. In fact, being nasty tends to escalate the volume and pump up the feedback loop.
Right.
So what I would recommend you do is try to find a nice way to do that. Ultimately, I think the reason why divorcing, particularly the gals that you deal with, are stuck in this feedback loop is because they're stuck in the relationship. And it's hard to disengage from a relationship, even if it's negative.
Well, and I'll tell you, it's not just being stuck in the relationship. A lot of it is fear of repercussion from that other person.
Yeah.
A lot of my women, when they first come into the group, they have really high anxiety about the communication with the other person. What's the person going to use against me? What are they trying to do? And I would say, you know, most of my people after 6 months to a year, the first thing that I hear from them is, oh my gosh, I feel like I can breathe. Like that's the difference in the communication. I feel like I can, I'm not so scared all the time of him trying to use this against me or whatever. Because really, once you start to understand what the court's looking at and how they want you to behave and all those kinds of things, honestly, a lot of times the crap that other person is throwing out isn't even true. Right. You know, my ex-husband flies by the seat of his pants a lot. And at the very beginning, before I knew anything about law, a lot of times he would throw stuff out and say, oh, well, the court's going to do A or the court's going to do B. And I would believe him because I didn't know.
Right.
You know, and then after a while, I started to go, wow, he's full of crap. You know, he doesn't have any leverage. He's just trying to bluff and convince me that he does.
Yeah.
You know, so that he can.
Right. It's all BS.
It's right. A lot of it is BS. And I find that's true, that what happens is these attacks or
I'm going to go to court unless you blank. And you know, the person comes to me as an attorney and they say, oh, I'm afraid they're going to come to court because they did this and that and this and other thing. And my response a lot of the times is, well, they can do that, but they don't have a strong legal position.
Right. Right. And and a lot of times
they don't.
And a lot of times when you're dealing with narcissistic personalities in particular, a lot of times they don't even realize themselves that they don't have a strong legal position. It's not like they've gone out and researched or done any of that. It's just somewhere along the way they picked up something that created this belief in them from somebody else's story or whatever. And then they just toss it out to you like it's the gospel. And then you go, oh my goodness, and you're terrified.
Yeah.
And really it has no feet, so to speak. It has no, you know.
Right. It's nothing. It's a nothing burger, as one commentator
Right.
says.
And when you start peeling back sort of the onion layers and you start realizing that's really when the fear and the anxiety and the stress start to dissipate, and you really start to feel empowered and in control, because you start to understand that what they're putting out there a lot of times is just
BS.
right. It's a mirage.
It's a mirage. Yeah, it's an illusion.
Right. It's an illusion. It's not reality. But you're continuing to attract this negativity into your life from them because you're feeding into it. You're giving it credence.
Yeah. Right. You're giving him what he wants.
Right. You're validating it. Uh-huh.
Right. But I think ultimately the decision, the antidote to the feedback loop, other than having good boundaries and moving the microphone away from the speaker, is then to change your focus to the positive things in your life. Right. And there's got to be something, you know, even if you're at your worst moment, you still have that relationship with the child, or you still have that hobby that you've always wanted to do, or that career you always wanted to pursue.
Right.
There's some dream that you let go of 20 years ago, and
right.
you need to dig that up and let it fire you up and inspire you to move forward.
That's right.
Then when the negativity comes on you, you're like rubber, you know, it just bounces off. Ding, ding, ding.
Right. Because your focus in your life is not him and what he's trying to do, or her and what she's trying to do. Your focus in your life is you and what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
And that is the core of law of attraction.
Right.
The core of law of attraction is being focused on what you want to have in your life, not focused on what someone else is trying to insert into your life.
Right. And that's how both of us, I mean, we came from pretty negative places in our divorces.
Yep.
And we have a wonderful life. After we stop podcasting, I think I'm going to go for a surf. and it's just, you know, we have a good marriage, and you know, if you're full of negativity, you're going to attract negative people into your life.
That's right.
So if you want to eventually have a happy marriage or a good relationship in the future, then you want to be focused on the positive and focused on the things that are good in your life, and be a joy to be around.
Right.
And then, you know, you'll start getting tips.
There you go. And, you know, law of attraction is about being intentional about what you want. And, you know, I always share the story about when I went through the divorce and I knew I wanted a significant other. That was an important piece for me. I'm not really like the alone type. And so I knew that it was important to find the right person. And I sat down and I made a list out. And I always tell Thomas, I don't know whether it was lucky for him or unlucky for him, but he was the first person that came along that met everything on the list. So, you know, that is being intentional and getting focused on what you're trying to attract in your life. And you know, you showed up. So that's proof it works, in my opinion.
It's like magic.
All right, so we hope this episode has been helpful in helping you shift from a negative mindset into a more positive one. I know that's a really tough thing to accomplish during divorce. If you're listening to the podcast, please don't forget to rate and review us in whatever place you're listening to us, you know, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever it is. And that really helps our rankings and helps more people find us. Don't forget to subscribe so you get notified as new episodes come out. And if you're listening to us on YouTube, same thing. Hit the like button below and subscribe so you get notified as new videos are released each week. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira. For more information, visit www.divorceuniversityonline.com.